For watching. This is AGK back with Garfield FANTV is what we'll call it. My name's AGK. I'll be your host tonight. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to review Garfield's game against Bainbridge, and we're going to look and preview the game against Lakeside. That's later tonight. It was a good game that they played on Tuesday against Bainbridge. It was over about halfway through the first quarter. They already were up by 20 points. It was 26-4. It was not a very fun game to watch in terms of the competition aspect, because I don't know that there's anybody on Bainbridge that could have played on Garfield's team. So it had the feel of an AAU contest. There was some cool things that happened though within the blowout. We'll talk about some of that stuff. My player of the game was Pierre Cockrell. He had a great first half. He was everywhere. He was all over the place. He kind of reminds me of somebody from my era, a guy who used to play for Franklin named Al Snow, a combo guard. He doesn't have as much size as Al Snow, but he's very active. He moves his feet very well. That's what reminded me of Al Snow. And he's kind of a do-everything guy. He can hit the three, although you don't, rely on him for doing that. But if you can give him the ball with an open look, he'll knock it down. So great game, Pierre. You were active all game long, that you were in there, and you were the catalyst for that blowout. You just were everywhere, denying people, getting steals, getting deflected passes, setting guys up with assists. So a great game, and it's good to see, the next man up mentality where there really isn't any one player that's going to dominate every game. When you have a team that's as talented as Garfield, that's going to happen. That each game there's going to be somebody else, which is great. Kind of reminds you of the Seahawks in 2012, where each game somebody else comes over to play. So hopefully we can have some of that magic going forward. But that was great. Some things in the game that I saw that weren't necessarily the best plays, or things Garfield needs to work on. So there's certain things that you can do that are simple that you have to execute and do them exactly the way they need to be done. For example, putting yourself between the ball and the player on a defensive rebound. Even though Garfield was up by a ton of points, there was kind of a sloppiness to the game. I don't even want to use that word in like a 40-point blowout, but they're still getting their stride. They're still working on playing together. The reason that I would even use the word sloppy is because when I went to Garfield, I played for this guy, Coach Jones, if anyone knows him. Guy like that, he was on the team that won the 87 title along with the girls when Garfield had 2 state championships in basketball, guys and girls. He was a real tough coach, and he was never impressed no matter what you did. So knowing that, he would have probably said the same thing, that they didn't really look that great in the first half, even though they were up by 30 points, before the half was even halfway over. That being said, they have some things to work on. It's early in the season. You expect to see those things. But when you're looking at a game like that, you're always comparing how your team's playing to the teams that are going to punish you if you don't do those things. So that is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as the season goes, how we secure the ball on the defensive end. When the ball goes up, are guys leaking out before the ball's been secured, which is what happened a couple times in the first half, or are we making sure we do the simple things wonderfully, which is you get the ball, you secure it, you make sure you see that your teammate has the ball, then you take off. There was one time in particular when like everybody ran away from the rebound because they all wanted to get out on the break, which, hey, I get it. When you're up by 30, you want to get in the highlight reel, you want to get your dunk in. I would have been the same way, but when it comes to the teams that are going to punish you for that repeatedly, you have to lock that stuff up, and this is a great chance to kind of iron those out early in the season. Great game all around for the team. It's going to be, interesting to see how the competition changes as we kind of get into the city schools and we start to play against, our typical rivals. But, it's a good game for the second game of the season. Really can't complain about anything. So that was awesome. let's look forward to this this Lakeside game a little bit. Lakeside got some transfers like most people, so that it's gonna be a better game for sure. We're getting into like the Metro teams that we know have a lot of talent, so I would expect a fight from Lakeside. I don't think that they're going to win ultimately, but I do expect a much better game. Look for Garfield to assert themselves very early, very often, and it should be a good game. So that's going on later tonight. I think Garfield should win by about 30 points or so, easily, but it might not be easy getting there. But expect them to pull away late. Maybe midway through the third quarter or fourth quarter, kind of like against Cleveland, where the talent just separated. So that's what's going on later tonight. Wanted to kind of highlight a couple players that maybe have gone under the radar, or people don't really know about. One player in particular is Ed Roy. That's Brandon Roy's big brother, for those who don't know. He used to go by Eddie Monts. That's Eddie Monster. But this guy was so much fun to watch back in the day. He was the human highlight reel. His most memorable plays were those two-handed under the basket put back dunks. He usually had about one of those a game where he would just get the ball under the hoop, go up, and kind of like a Dwight Howard, cock back, two-hand, and just primal scream. The dude is about as big as Brandon height-wise, but he's maybe 50 pounds more, body mass. So he's bulkier. He played a kind of a hybrid forward center. Tons of talent. If it wasn't for Ed Roy beating up on Brandon in the backyard, there's no way Brandon would have been the player he is today. So much credit goes to the older brothers. Michael Jordan had older brothers. He talks about how that was a motivating factor when he was growing up, if you can believe that. Michael Jordan being beaten by his older brother, but it's natural and it's great for competition. So Ed Roy was a great player for Garfield. He was on the team that won the 1999 state championship in the Kingdom. Some of you guys might not be old enough to remember that, but that's where all the 4A state games were played up to a certain point. They were played in the Kingdom. So that's where that game was. But he was just a great talent, and it's good to see him back in the gym. He's got a lot of good stories about his time at Garfield and all the different battles that they had with, I think Scalabrine was going to Garfield during that time. I think he was at Redmond at the time. I can remember Ed talking about Scalabrine. What? They got Scalabrine in here. They don't have me in here. So, he was that big of a deal, where he'd be comparing himself to a guy that did play in the league. Another player on the team that I'd like to profile real quick is Ira. You guys might not remember who that was, but he was our point guard. He was a football player too. Really good defensive player. The thing I remember most about Ira was his defensive slide. He had really quick feet, and he was really good at staying in front of the defenders. So it's great to see guys like Ira, Ed, even Javon Nickens. He's one of the assistant coaches. He was a great defensive player in his time. He would just smother guys defensively. So it's really great to see those guys paying it forward and being in the program and being there as a resource for these kids, because they've been through it all, they've seen it all, they know the expectations. That might be why I come off a little bit harsh on the kids, because I know what the expectations are. I know what the coaches are saying in practice. I know what coaches are saying when they look at the film, because I was there in the program. I wasn't on varsity, but I got my butt beat pretty bad by the coaches. So I know those standards are high, and they're not going to change. So things to work on for today's game for Garfield against Lakeside. Make sure that we are having a good defensive presence. I say doing the simple things perfectly. These are things that are completely about effort. They have nothing to do with your skill level, how much you know about the game. When the ball goes up, you get yourself between the player and the hoop, and you root them out of the lane. Those are things that when we get to the more competitive matchups, we're not going to be able to just jump over somebody. We're going to have to get back to the fundamentals. There was a couple plays where Garfield got beat on a backdoor cut for an easy basket. That would have been like the only way that Bainbridge was going to score, would have been to use the fundamentals of the game to their advantage. So those are the kind of things that could trip us up later on if we don't tighten them up now and get a chance to work those out. But there's plenty of time to do it, and I have no doubt that they will. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, guys, to Garfield Fan TV. I'm AGK. We'll see you next time. Go Dogs.